It was the kind of Saturday morning that should have been sealed in amber, a perfect memory of domestic peace. Sunlight, thick and golden as honey, spilled through the slats of the blinds, striping the hardwood floor. From the kitchen, the warm, yeasty smell of fresh cinnamon rolls wafted up, a scent that always meant safety and slow moments. And upstairs, the soundtrack to this perfect morning was the light, tinkling giggle of my daughter, Maisie, as she meticulously brushed the synthetic hair of her favorite doll, Princess Starlight. I was in the living room, surrounded by a mountain of clean laundry, in the middle of the rhythmic fold-in stack that I found so meditative, when the spell was broken. The front door swung open without a knock, without a warning, banging against the stopper with a sound that was pure entitlement. "Hey, where's the little gremlin?" My sister Whitney called out, her voice echoing in the quiet house. She waltzed in as if the deed to the property was in her name, her designer handbag swinging from her arm like a wrecking ball. I stiffened, a half-folded T-shirt clutched in my hands. My spine went rigid, a conditioned response to her presence. Whitney was the sun around which my parents' universe orbited. She was the golden child, the drama queen, the star of every family gathering. Worse, she was my parents' forever favorite, a fact they never bothered to conceal. It didn't matter what she'd done. Growing up, her life was a highlight reel of bad decisions and theatrical chaos. She'd cheated on exams, blaming the teacher. She'd borrowed my savings for a concert and never paid it back. She'd thrown tantrums that would make a soap opera director blush, complete with slammed doors and crocodile tears that somehow always worked. And through it all, they adored her. She was spirited, they'd say. A firecracker. Meanwhile, I, the responsible one, the one who paid her bills on time, who remembered birthdays, who built a stable life, was a constant disappointment. I was too sensitive when I got my feelings hurt. I was too strict for wanting Maisie to have a bedtime. I was, in their most damning assessment, too boring. Before I could even muster a response, the pitter-patter of small feet came thundering down the stairs. Maisie, her wild, curly brown hair bouncing with each gleeful step, appeared at the bottom of the staircase. Of course she loved Whitney. How could she not? Whitney was loud, wild, and above all, fun. She was the human equivalent of a carnival, all bright lights and sugary snacks, while I was the quiet library next door. I couldn't blame Maisie. She was only 6. She didn't see the manipulation. She only saw the magic show. "Auntie Whit," Maisie squealed, her face alight with pure, unadulterated joy as she launched herself into Whitney's arms. Whitney scooped her up in a dramatic, sweeping motion, lifting her high into the air. This mop is completely out of control," she said, tugging playfully, a little too hard, on a long, corkscrew curl that framed Maisie's face. "Careful," I said from the hallway, my voice tight. I was trying to sound casual, breezy, anything other than the ball of anxiety I was. She's sensitive about her hair. "Oh, relax." Whitney shot a smirk over Maisie's head, a look I knew all too well. It was the look that said, "You are so uptight, and I am so effortlessly cool." She's a kid, not a supermodel on a photo shoot. I should have said more. In the years to come, I would replay that moment 1,000 times, and in every single one, I would tell her to put my daughter down and get out of my house. But I didn't. My parents were visiting later that day, and the thought of sparking another family-wide feud, of enduring the days of icy phone calls and my mother's disappointed sighs, was exhausting. So I swallowed my words and retreated to the laundry. The next few hours were a masterclass in my family's dysfunction. We had brunch. I'd made pancakes from scratch, but Whitney had brought artisan bagels from a place she insisted was the only spot worth eating at. My parents arrived, and the temperature in the room instantly shifted. They descended upon Whitney like she was a returning war hero, fawning over a story she was telling about a disastrous date. My mom had even brought a homemade lemon pie, its meringue perfectly browned. Whitney's favorite. Not mine, of course. My favorite was cherry, a fact my mother seemed to forget annually. "I'm going to take this little munchkin upstairs for a mini spa day," Whitney suddenly announced, giving Maisie a conspiratorial wink. "She's due for a little makeover." Maisie's face lit up as if Whitney had just offered her a trip to Disneyland. "Can we paint nails, too? Can we do sparkles?" "Absolutely." "Auntie's got the magic hands," Whitney declared, already leading a bouncing Maisie toward the stairs. A cold spike of dread shot through me. I stood up, abandoning a stack of towels. "Whitney," I said, my voice sharper this time, losing its battle for casualness. "Don't you cut her hair. Seriously, I'm not joking." Whitney paused on the third step and turned, laughing as she held up her hands in mock surrender. What am I, a monster? Relax, sis, geez. She shot a look at our parents, a look that said, see how she is? I wish I had followed them. I wish I had trusted the screaming siren in my gut. But I stayed downstairs, a captive audience to my mother, who was now droning on and on about how Whitney was interviewing for a position with some luxury fashion brand. I should really be more like her, my mom suggested, not for the first time. Looser, more modern, not so uptight about everything. The words were a familiar litany, a dull, throbbing ache I had learned to live with. About an hour crept by. An hour of me smiling and nodding, my stomach twisting into a tighter and tighter knot. Then I heard small footsteps on the stairs again, slow and hesitant this time. Maisie appeared in the doorway of the living room. Her face was flushed, her big brown eyes watery and wide with a look of deep unease. Mommy, she whispered, her voice so small it was barely a breath. I don't like it. And then I saw it. The world tilted on its axis. My breath caught in my throat, a painful, sharp thing. Her beautiful hair, gone. Her long, soft brown curls, the ones that I had so carefully detangled and braided, the ones that cascaded down her back like a silken waterfall, had been hacked off. It wasn't a haircut. It was an act of violence. It was butchered. The right side of her head was nearly shaved, the skin pale and exposed, while the left side was a jagged, uneven mess, with a few sad strands dangling down like someone had given up halfway through the demolition. It was a cruel caricature of a haircut. My heart didn't just drop, it plummeted, leaving a cold, cavernous void in my chest. What happened? I asked, my voice a strangled whisper. I knelt in front of her, my body already trembling with a rage so profound it felt seismic. Whitney came sauntering in behind her, a triumphant, smug look on her face. She was holding a pair of my silver sewing scissors like a trophy. Chill, she laughed, a sound that was like grinding glass in my ears. It's just hair. She wanted bangs. I just gave her my edgy, modern version. She's 6, I hissed, the word tearing from my throat. You butchered her hair. You did this to her on purpose. My mom snorted from the armchair behind me. Oh, please, Sarah, don't be so dramatic. It'll grow back. Honestly, my dad chimed in, not even looking up from his phone. She looks better. Less messy. Whitney did her a favor. And that was it. That was the final crack in the dam. Maisie, hearing their words, their laughter, their dismissal of her pain, burst into tears. Not small, sad tears, but huge, body-racking sobs of pure humiliation and grief right there on the living room rug. And no one, not my mother, not my father, not the sister who had done this to her, moved to comfort her, except me. I scooped her into my arms, her small body shaking against mine. I held her tight, glaring at the three of them through a blinding, hot haze of rage. You think this is funny? I said, my voice dangerously low. You think this is some hilarious prank? Whitney just shrugged, the epitome of callous indifference. Come on, it's not like she's entering a beauty pageant tomorrow. Lighten up. Maisie buried her face in my neck, her sobs soaking the collar of my shirt. And that's when I knew I was done. I didn't say another word. I didn't argue. I didn't scream, though I wanted to. The scream was a living thing inside my chest, clawing to get out, but I held it in. Instead, I looked at them. My sister, my mother, my father. These 3 people who were supposed to be my family, and something inside of me that had been soft and yielding for 34 years hardened into solid steel. They had finally crossed a line from which there was no return. And this time I was going to make damn sure they felt it. The next morning was brutal. Maisie refused to go to school. She stood in front of the mirror in her bathroom, her lower lip trembling. I tried everything. I tried brushing what little was left of her hair into a cute style with a sparkly headband, but it only accentuated the jagged hacktat patches. She just stared at her reflection, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek, and then the dam broke again. They'll laugh at me, Mommy, she whispered, the words broken by sobs. I sat on the edge of the tub beside her, wrapping my arms around her fragile frame. You're still the most beautiful girl in this entire world, I said, my voice fierce and certain, kissing her temple. And your hair does not change that, not one bit. But you don't have to go today. We'll take the day for us. I sent a text to her school, then called in sick to my own job, citing a family emergency, which felt like the understatement of the century. I spent the day with Maisie, a whirlwind of calculated distraction. We went to the science museum. We got ice cream for lunch. We built a magnificent fort in the living room and watched movies until dusk. I did anything and everything I could to make her feel seen, loved, and safe. But beneath my calm voice and my gentle hands, a storm was brewing. a cold, meticulous, calculating storm. I couldn't stop thinking about the way Whitney had laughed, the way my mom dismissed Maisie's tears like they were a minor inconvenience, the way my dad, my own father, said she looked better now. They hadn't just hurt my child. They had publicly humiliated her in what should have been her safest space, surrounded by her family. And they expected me to just move on, to absorb it, to smooth things over like I always had. But this time was different. I didn't just want them to feel guilty. I wanted them to feel a fraction of the searing shame that Maisie felt when she stared at her own reflection. So that night, long after Maisie had finally fallen asleep, snuggled up beside me in my bed, her breathing soft and even, I opened my laptop. I navigated to a folder buried deep in my hard drive, a file I hadn't touched in years. It was a relic from a time when I had more savings and a different kind of hope. My family didn't know it, but years ago, when I was flush with cash from an early and smart tech investment, I had become a silent partner in the very beauty salon Whitney had worked at part-time. I had helped the owner, Marcia, an old college friend, expand her business from a single-chair operation to a thriving local hotspot. I never asked for credit or public acknowledgement. I only asked for one thing, a clause in our partnership agreement that granted me final decision-making authority in matters of brand integrity and personnel, if I ever felt it was necessary. And now, it was necessary. The next morning, I met Marcia at the salon before it opened. The air smelled of coffee and hairspray. I told her the whole story, my voice shaking at first, then hardening with resolve as I recounted every cruel detail. When I showed her the picture I'd taken of Maisie's hair, her face, usually so warm and cheerful, became a mask of cold fury. She did that to a child. Marcia said, her voice low and dangerous. And then she used my salon's name. She brought the scissors from here, I told her. She had one of the branded tote bags you gave the staff. She used it like it was a prop in her sick prank. She even posted about it on her Instagram story. I slid my phone across the counter, showing her the screenshot I had taken before Whitney deleted it. It was a blurry photo of the silver scissors on my living room rug. The caption read, "A little snip-snip chaos for my niece. Anti-life makeover madness." Marcia's jaw tightened. The muscle in her cheek flexed. "Done," she said, without a moment's hesitation. Consider her gone. Whitney had been trying to get freelance work through Marcia's network. That was now over. And one more thing, I said, a new idea taking root in the scorched earth of my anger. I want to host an event here, something special, something for little girls like Maisie. Marcia blinked, then a slow, brilliant smile spread across her face. Now that, she said, is something I can get behind. 2 weeks later, we launched the Curls and Courage campaign. It was an open invitation for free, confidence-boosting makeovers for young girls who were recovering from bullying, medical treatments, or any kind of trauma involving their hair. The response was overwhelming. Professional stylists from across the city volunteered their time. Donations of products and funds poured in. The event went viral on local social media. And guess who was the star of it all? Maisie. Her story, which we shared carefully and with her permission, touched hearts everywhere. Mothers, daughters, teachers, even strangers sent messages of support. She was featured on the local evening news, wearing a sparkly pink dress I'd bought her for the occasion, sitting in a stylist's chair as one of the city's best hairdressers worked magic, transforming the butchered mess into a chic, stylish pixie cut that framed her face perfectly. Her smile, a genuine, radiant smile I hadn't seen in 2 weeks, came back. Her inner glow returned, brighter than before. And Whitney, she watched it all from her apartment, unemployed, unfollowed by a growing number of people and seething with a powerless fury. But I wasn't done. During the media buzz, I wrote a guest post for a prominent national parenting blog. I told Maisie's story in raw, honest detail. I didn't use their names, but I didn't have to. I described a golden child aunt and enabling grandparents. Anyone who knew our family, even peripherally, knew exactly who I was talking about. Soon, the whispers started. Whitney lost a major brand collaboration she'd been bragging about for weeks, the one my mother had been so proud of. The brand cited a misalignment of values after an anonymous tip pointed them to the blog post. Some of her so-called influencer friends began to publicly distance themselves. Even my parents started getting concerned messages and phone calls from old friends, asking if the awful story they'd read online could possibly be true. My mother called, her voice a blade of ice. You made us look like monsters. I held the phone, the silence stretching between us. You know, she added, her voice dripping with cold condescension. Maybe if you weren't always so determined to play the victim, things wouldn't escalate like this. I almost laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. The only victim here was Maisie, I said, my voice steady and clear. And instead of protecting her, you laughed in her face. She is a child. She'll forget, you said, but I won't, ever. Then I hung up. 3 days later, I was in a lawyer's office. I filed for an official no-contact order against my sister and included my parents in the filing as well, citing a pattern of emotional abuse and their role in the incident that had caused my child's significant emotional distress. My lawyer delivered the paperwork. My parents, in their spectacular narcissism, tried to protest it, calling me hysterical and vindictive. But deep down, they knew. They knew the tide of public opinion, the opinion of their friends and their community, was no longer in their favor. They had always operated under the assumption that I would stay quiet, that I would absorb every insult, every slight, every betrayal because that's what I had always done. I was the family shock absorber. But this time, they hadn't just slighted me. They cut my daughter, so I cut them off. Permanently. Months passed. The silence was deafening at first, then blissful. Without the constant, toxic drip of my parents' criticism and my sister's drama, our little house became a sanctuary again. Maisie flourished. She started waking up with that old light in her eyes. Her confidence returned, not all at once, but bit by bit. First in the form of small, shy smiles at school, then louder, more frequent laughs, and finally, one day, she presented me with a picture she had drawn. It was a stick figure with a huge, wild cloud of curly hair, wearing a superhero cape. Underneath, in wobbly letters, it was labeled, Mom. But just as our new piece began to feel solid and permanent, my sister tried to crawl her way back in. It started with a message request on social media. Whitney, hey, I know things got out of hand. I'm really sorry. Can we please talk? I want to apologize to Maisie. I stared at the screen for a long, long time. Foolish, treacherous part of me flickered with hope. Maybe she's changed. Maybe she finally gets it. Then the next day, a video surfaced. A friend sent it to me with the caption, "You need to see this." It was Whitney on some obscure podcast, interviewed by a host who clearly loved drama. She was laughing, laughing. People are just way too sensitive these days, you know, she said, tossing her hair, especially about hair. I snipped one little ponytail on my niece, and I got canceled like I committed a felony. It's insane. Any doubt I had, any flicker of hope, evaporated into cold, hard certainty. That was it. I wasn't just going to move on from them. I was going to rebuild the future in a way that ensured my daughter would never, ever again live in the shadow of that kind of casual cruelty. So I made a move they never saw coming. You see, my father prided himself on being a savvy, silent investor. He loved the power of backroom deals and quiet influence. One of his proudest investments was a minority stake in a small, exclusive chain of luxury spas. The same spa chain that, in a beautiful twist of fate, had just chosen to partner with our Curls and Courage Foundation for a statewide fundraising initiative. They were, of course, completely unaware that one of their key investors was the father of the woman who had started the viral movement in the first place. And legally, according to their own very public corporate bylaws, he could not remain an investor in a company whose charitable work publicly exposed his own family for enabling abusive behavior. It was a clear conflict of interest and a violation of their brand's stated public values. I gave the spa's legal team everything they needed. Proof, screenshots of Whitney's post, the link to the podcast, the blog post, a copy of the no-contact order. And I highlighted the specific clause in their company's partnership policy that required full ethical and moral alignment with the company's public-facing values. Within a week, my father was unceremoniously dropped from the board, and his investment was forcibly bought out. All his years of quiet reputation building, all the social capital he had amassed, all of it was gone, unraveled by a single clause and the actions of his favorite daughter. But I still wasn't done. I took the momentum from Curls and Courage and turned it into something bigger, something permanent. The Ribbon Project, a fully registered nonprofit organization dedicated to providing free therapy, confidence-building makeovers, and legal aid for children who had experienced public humiliation, physical bullying, or emotional abuse, especially at the hands of their own family members. Our launch event was a gala, a full-blown red carpet affair. And Maisie, my brave, bright, beautiful girl, walked that red carpet with me. Her curls had grown back, bouncy and beautiful, and she wore a sparkling silver dress, holding my hand tight. A reporter from a national morning show knelt down and asked her how she felt, being the inspiration for all of this. Maisie looked straight into the camera, her voice clear and steady. She said, when people try to cut you down, you just have to grow back louder. The photo of her saying those words, a look of fierce, innocent wisdom on her face, ended up on the cover of 3 different parenting magazines. A month later, an anonymous letter arrived. No name, no return address, but the sharp, slanted handwriting was unmistakably my mother's. Inside was a single, wrinkled piece of stationery. It contained one line. You made us look like villains, but we were just trying to protect your sister's big day. The big day she was referring to was the brunch, the day Whitney was meant to be celebrated for her job interview. Attached to the note was a faded, wrinkled photograph of me, Whitney, and a much younger Maisie, taken years ago, back when I still held out a desperate hope that our family could one day be normal. I stared at that photo, at the ghost of the woman who was so willing to be small, and then I slowly, deliberately fed it through my office shredder. They weren't protecting anything. They were a rot, a blight, and they were dedicated to destroying anything that didn't worship at their altar. I had finally stopped letting them. I never replied to the letter. Instead, I stood in front of 300 people that weekend at the Ribbon Project's first annual fundraiser, and I shared the full story from beginning to end for the very first time. I didn't hide the names. I didn't soften the details. I didn't flinch at the audible gasps from the crowd. And when I finished, the applause was thunderous. It wasn't just clapping. It was a wave of support, of understanding, of shared strength. That night, a woman with tears in her eyes approached me. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching my hand. "Thank you for showing the rest of us that silence doesn't have to be the price of survival." I nodded, my own eyes stinging, as I squeezed Maisie's hand, who was standing proudly beside me, because that's what they never understood. My sister, my mother, my father. They thought cutting someone down, making them smaller, would keep them weak and manageable. But all they did was prune the wrong plant. And now, I was blooming in a garden of my own making, and I had no room left for weeds. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.